evaluate over time. So yeah, but guys, my third talking point right here. We got Jai Opetaia, right? Now, Jai Opetaia, he made a lot of news recently because, to the surprise of many people, he signed with Zuffa Boxing, which was surprising because the thought amongst most of the boxing community and amongst most of the boxing world was that Zuffa Boxing was going to struggle to land like the top talent, just because, if you're a world champion, they had already talked about payment restrictions and payment minimums and, caps, a payment cap, which if you're an upcoming fighter, it's good. But if you're like a guy that's in the top 1%, like a Jai Opetaia, then it's not so good, right? But he signed with them, and that raised a lot of questions like, would Jai Opetaia, now that he's with Zuffa, would he be allowed to unify the belts with guys like Zoto Ramirez or Benavidez if he wins? Can he fight the winner of that fight? And apparently they're saying he can, which is awesome, which, I'll get to here in a second. But then also, conversely, you also have Oleksandr Usyk, who was spotted with Dana White. Apparently he took a meeting with Zuffa Boxing, and he's going to be looking to maybe sign with Zuffa Boxing. So, maybe one of the big time fights on Zuffa Boxing becomes Opetaia versus Usyk, right? So let's unpack all this. Let's break it down piece by piece, brick by brick, detail by detail, and we'll go to screen share for this one. So here you go. So you had earlier today, you had Mick Francis, the promoter of Jai Opetaia. He was on Zuffa Boxing, and he was asked the question of, will Jai Opetaia be allowed to unify the titles with other fighters, right? Or is he just going to be restricted to fighting for the Zuffa title or the ring title or whatever the case may be? And to that, Mick Francis said, look, Zuffa will let Jai Opetaia fight for the titles and unify the division. So Opetaia sounded like a dummy to a lot of us because he's talking about unifying titles. And you got, Dana White, and you got all the power brokers from Zuffa Boxing going to Capitol Hill trying to revise the Muhammad Ali Act so they can control the sport more. But at least in the early stages, they are going to allow Jai Opetaia, their first big premier championship signing, to kind of maneuver as he sees fit. Now, do I think this will last long term? No. And I don't think like Dana White and Ari Emanuel and Nick Khan, you got to understand these are very smart business people. These are very shrewd businessmen, and they understand public perception. They understand that if they were to just rule with an iron fist off the bat and say, "Hey, Jai Opetaia, you can't do that," then it would cause people like me and boxing fans and people that are already against them to push back and be negative towards them, right? But by allowing Opetaia to do that, they can kind of, alleviate and not have so much negative public perception right away, right? And they can gradually get to the point where, okay, maybe they're going to use Opetaia as a chess piece to land other fighters. I know, shout out to Sean Tatel. He mentioned it on his channel, and he's mentioned it in my comment section. Maybe they're going to use Opetaia as a chess piece to lure a guy like Dave Benavidez. If he beats Zotto and wants to come fight Opetaia, then now boom, you got potentially Zuffa Boxing now doing business with Dave Benavidez, right? So there's a lot of ways that this can go, and I think Opetaia is going to have the chance. I feel like, if nothing else, for Opetaia, and the reason I'm happy for him, because the reality is that I like him. He's a very good fighter. I love watching him fight. But he was never, ever going to get, like, you could say, a fair shake or be in the power position under the current structure of boxing. He wasn't. Like, let's be real about it. With Dana White, with Zuffa Boxing, Jai Opetaia's profile is going to be raised exponentially. He's going to get a chance to fight on the Paramount Plus platform, which has a lot of viewership. And they're gonna treat him like the A side, and this will really be the first time in his career where he's really having the backing of a major promoter and a major network and a major platform. And it can't be stressed enough for fighters at the championship level. That's massive, right? So we'll see how it goes. I think at some point Zuffa Boxing will try to freeze out the other titles, but listen, again, just because I have my preconceived notions and I'm negative, and I have my thoughts about Dana White and Zuffa Boxing, who's to say that maybe they don't, give these guys a fair shake? Because unlike the UFC, unlike MMA, where they're the only game in town, they're not the only game in town in boxing, and there's quite a lot of competition. So, we'll see how it goes. But right now, that's what's happening. Now, that's one side of the equation. On the other side of the equation, you got Oleksandr Usyk, and here he is. Earlier, I don't know if this was today, but I guess recently, here he is spotted with Dana White, because I guess now there's discussions about Oleksandr Usyk potentially signing with Zuffa Boxing, which, is quite interesting, because Usyk was heavily linked in the IBB boxing circle because he was supposed to be the guy that fought Deontay Wilder. So it seems like Usyk's a hot property. IBB boxing want him. Zuffa Boxing want him. And I think Usyk's reached a stage where, what is he, 37, 38 years old? He probably feels like, I've completed boxing. I've won a gold medal. I've been undisputed 2 times. And he's calling out Wilder. You don't really hear Usyk calling out Ajit Caballero. You don't really hear him saying he want to fight Moses Itama. He's not going near them guys. And, if they do sign Oleksandr Usyk, then bam, Opetaia, you have your first. I feel like you have your first real. I don't know if you want to call it a mega fight, because neither one of these guys is a massive star. But again, this is not normal circumstances, because Dana White and Zuffa Boxing and Nick Khan and Ari Emanuel, these are all people that understand business and marketing, and they have this company Endeavor, which they have WWE, they have UFC, they now have their stake in boxing, they have Power Slap, they have all these different avenues in which they can cross promote. So it's not the same as, let's say, an IBB boxing coming into play. So yeah, under normal circumstances, you'd probably say Usyk versus Opetaia. It's a very good fight, but it's not a mega fight. But listen, it's going to be promoted at a pretty high rate. So I feel like this could be a quote unquote mega fight, only because one thing Dana White understands more than anything is how to market, right? And I know the UFC isn't in the best place right now. I know a lot of MMA fans, from the little bit I do hear and do pay attention to, they've complained about not getting certain fights. I know, like, they're not happy with Dana White. But again, this is a new challenge to Dana White. And one thing I do know about Dana White from watching interviews over the years is that Dana White's always been a boxing fan, right? Like, I know he loves MMA, and that's his thing, but he's also had a special place in his heart for the sport of boxing. And you got people in the media and in the boxing community that don't take Dana White serious. So I feel like he has a chip on his shoulder, and he's gonna put his best foot forward. I choose to believe that about Dana White and Zuffa Boxing, that they're gonna, whatever is the best effort, they're gonna give it, because that's what it requires to be successful. Now in the UFC, in the MMA realm, their best efforts really aren't required anymore, because like Bellator can't really mess with them. What is it? WEC cage fighting? Do they even got that anymore? Like, they can't really mess with UFC. They have an outright monopoly on the sport MMA. So yeah, I think there's different dynamics in play here with Zuffa Boxing, and I think we're gonna learn more in these first 2 months when they do their first show on Friday with Callum Walsh, their second show with Charles Martin, Efe Agjagba. And from what I've heard, right, from what I've gathered, because I've asked around, I said, hey, like, who are some of the boxing people? Like, does Zuffa Boxing have good boxing people? And from what I've heard, they've have a couple of really good boxing people. So we'll see if those good boxing people remain good boxing people as things progress. But those are my thoughts on that. Hopefully they allow Opetaia to fight the winner of Benavidez and Zotto, and their lust for power doesn't interfere with that.